guys, it's Jessica from Peace Out Books, and today I'm here with my mid-month wrap-up for the month of April. It is the 16th that I'm filming this, so that means I have to talk about the first 15 days of April and all the books I read. I read 17 books, which is on track of how I normally read in the beginning of a month, and so I have a lot of indie romances, a lot of historicals, some rereads, so I will go ahead and get to everything I read in April. The first one I have is one that has been very polarizing lately, and that is The Confidence of Wildflowers by Macaulay Smeltzer. The author did send me a copy of this book and I read it and I really enjoyed it. I actually have a reading vlog for it that I can link down below. It's my 24-hour reading vlog. I read it in a day, kind of. I finished it in the second day, but I flew through this book and it is an age gap neighbor's romance with a single dad. It seems very just fun and sweet in the beginning and takes a really serious turn. So in here, our heroine has a traumatic past with her father, so there are trigger warnings for sexual assault in this book and abuse. So she was treated poorly by her father and she is currently dating someone. There's cheating in here as well, which a lot of people don't like. She's dating her boyfriend that she's had for the past 2 years, and it's about them figuring out what they're going to do after college. He's going off to play, I think, football out of college, and she is staying behind and he wants her to move in with him in Boston or something. She's like, no. And her new neighbor is this landscaper, really hot older guy. I think he's in his 30s and he has a son, and they start falling for each other. She ends up babysitting for the son a little bit. He ends up being there for her when her boyfriend isn't, and the beginning it felt very YA. I wasn't the biggest fan of the writing style with the heroine's main voice. She is a little bit hard to like. She feels very, very young and naive, but I could not put this book down. There is something that happens at the end that a lot of people feel like was put in as shock value, and I mean, it was very shocking and it makes me want to pick up the next book, so I ended up giving this 4 to 5 stars. If you want to know what that thing that happens is, I did put a spoiler warning in my Goodreads review if you want to check that out. My Goodreads is always linked down below, but I think that this was just really addicting. I could not stop reading it. I really liked her romance with the hero and how it was a forbidden romance. The mother ends up having something that happens with her as well. There is an illness in here, and I do think that was kind of skipped over a little too quickly and just resolved a little too quickly, but I still really enjoyed this. I don't know what else to say. I get the critiques, but I still enjoyed the book, so I'm giving it 4 to 5 stars. Then I read Dare to be a Duchess by Sapna Bog. This is a historical romance with a half British, half Indian heroine, and she grew up in India and she ends up coming to England, and her uncle, I believe, will not accept her because she is half Indian, and people are very racist towards people of Indian descent, and so she is not really accepted into society. And so our heroine's best friend's uncle actually takes her in, and he helps take care of her and helps her out in society. And so the heroine and her best friend end up going to a very scandalous ball together because the heroine's best friend wants to meet up with someone, a suitor, and the heroine's best friend's brother is infuriated when this happens, and the heroine ends up kissing the best friend's brother to distract him, and he's really into it, and then when he realizes it's a distraction, he gets really angry because he really liked it. And so it's the romance between the heroine and her best friend's brother, and the brother decides, fine, you know what, you two need to get married, and you need to get married within the next 6 months or I will find someone for you. And the heroine knows she's never going to find someone in high society that will accept her for who she is. She will not have a happy marriage. She wants to marry for love, and so she keeps on pushing back against him. He has a dowry for her and everything, and they end up falling for each other instead. I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 4.5 stars. I liked the animosity from the hero. He's just a very brooding hero, and he wants the best for his sister and for the heroine, and the heroine meets a lot of racist comments from the people in society, especially the women in society, and she's related to a duke, but he will not accept her, and so she kind of gets closer to her cousin, though, and how he is willing to help her out in society, and just how society really cares about titles and birthright. And it's a very interesting romance. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4.5 stars, and I had to jump right in the second one, which I will talk about at the end of this video because it was one of the later books I read in the first half of the month. Then I picked up The Promise of a Kiss by Kate Bateman. This is one of her novellas that she indie published. I did interview Kate Bateman actually yesterday on my channel, the day I'm filming this, if you want to check that interview out. This one, she said, was definitely inspired by The Mummy. Our heroine is a cartographer. She's making a map in Egypt, and the hero is asked by, I think, his aunt or something to go bring her home because it's too dangerous to be away in Egypt as a single lady. So he's offered 5,000 pounds, and he's like, I need the money. I'm gonna go. They have a past. They really can't stand each other. They've kissed before. He's proposed before. He infuriates her, but of course there's an attraction underlying there, and so he goes to find her, and he finds her, but she finds a a cursed artifact that someone steals from them and is going to give to someone dangerous, so they decide to track him down. Lots of fun adventure, enemies to lovers. I gave this 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. I wish it was a longer book because this would have been so good, like fleshed out with so much more action and adventure, but if you love The Mummy, highly recommend checking this one out. Then I did a reading vlog where I read BookTube's recommendations of forbidden taboo romances. So I read Devilry by Marley Valentine. This is an MM teacher professor romance. I gave this 3 stars. I wasn't that impressed by it. I think that they fell for each other really quickly, and the resolution was a little bit too convenient, and there was no real repercussion for their relationship, so I just was reading along. I didn't love any of the characters. I didn't love the side plots. I didn't love the side characters, and so it wasn't a bad book, but it wasn't something I was absolutely in love with, so I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Then I finally read American Queen by Sierra Simone, which I'm actually nervous because I just watched my friend Tori's wrap up and she did not enjoy the rest of the series. So she, like, I always say this, but I can never fly through series. I can't just like pick up a whole series all at once. I read one book, read a bunch else, then come back to the series. Tori has already read all 3 and she picked this up the same day I did. But this one is a MMF romance, and it is with the President of the United States, the Vice President, and our heroine is Greer, and I believe that was, yeah, Greer. She meets the hero when she's 16, and obviously she's very young, she's underage. They kiss, but nothing else happens, and then a few years later she gets with someone else, and then a few years later she's reunited with the guy from when she was 16 as the president, and it turns out someone else from her past was the vice president now, and the president and the vice president actually have a kind of thing together, and then she's thrown in the mix, and so they're kind of trying to understand like their dynamics and their relationship with all 3 of them. The first half was kind of boring to me. I didn't really understand what the whole like end game or actual plot of the book was, other than the fact that there was a romance. Like, I was like, what's driving these characters? She's a professor now, but I was like, what else is there to her character? It felt kind of flat, but once all 3 of them were involved in trying to figure out how their relationship would work, I really enjoyed this book, and I was really invested in their romance and their dynamics and their past and how they're going to tell each other things, and so I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. The ending is definitely a cliffhanger as well, that I felt like, okay, now we're getting somewhere with an actual plot, so 4 out of 5 stars, but I was a little bit disappointed overall because I expected it to be 5 stars because of how many people talk about this book, but I am excited to continue on, though my expectations are lowered because of Tori's review. Then I ended up picking up Saving Grace by Julie Garwood for my members exclusive reading vlog. I was a little late on this because it took me a lot longer than I wanted it to. The past 3 books I talked about, except for The Promise of a Kiss, which is a novella on ebook, were all audiobooks, as I was listening to a lot of audiobooks while trying to slog through this paperback. I love Julie Garwood, but this was really boring to me. I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. This one, our heroine has to marry our hero. She is a widow, and then her lands, though, well, so her husband is missing. Like, he's presumed dead. He like fell off a cliff, and he was very abusive towards her, and so she thinks she's barren because she can have a child with him, and she has lands from her husband, though, that actually belong to this Scottish clan who wants the lands back, so the laird ends up marrying her, and she's very nervous, but he ends up being very gentle, and they fall in love, and he constantly tells her she's a woman, she needs to go relax and go rest and go sleep, and that's pretty much the whole book, and it was very boring. When she finally could go out and do something, the plot picked up, and then it came boring again. And then we only got a lot of stuff like at the end where there were people that were bad guys and stuff, but overall as a historical romance, it was pretty boring. So I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I was disappointed. So many people love this book, but I need a little bit more action in my plot, so I just couldn't love it. Then I am continuing on with the Fallen Men read along. I'm doing my friend Tori from Novel Life, and so I did a reread of Good Gone Bad. I did listen to the audiobook of this one. This is Harley Rose and Tanner's story. I think I gave it 4.5 stars. They're not my favorite couple, but they are, I want to say, like halfway through the series for me. The next one in the series and the first book are definitely lesser on the scale than this one, but Harley Rose is the daughter of Zeus, who is the motorcycle club leader, and she ends up getting in a relationship with a different motorcycle club, which is not the same as the Fallen. That motorcycle club is very not good. They don't treat their women well, they don't treat each other well, and they deal with a lot of illegal stuff, and so she ends up murdering her boyfriend at the beginning of this because he was trying to assault her, and she calls the only person she can rely on, and that is Danner, who is a cop, and he's actually an undercover cop. So Danner is undercover for a different police force with the Berserker MC, and Harley Rose is with the Berserkers, and so they're not in the town, I forget what their town's called, but they're not in the town of the rest of the Fallen series. This is very detached from the Fallen Men, so that's why I think I didn't love this as much, because we didn't have like a lot of the Fallen characters, because we weren't with that motorcycle club, and so Danner is undercover, and Harley Harley Rose ends up getting protection from another person in the MC so that she can hang around, because now she's going to try to take them down as well because she knows that they're bad, and it's their romance. He is older and she kind of cuts off her family, and it's really hard to watch that, but I really enjoy this. If you like the bad girl, good guy trope, you would enjoy this one. I enjoyed seeing all the characters and watching Harley Rose, who's supposed to be this really strong, independent character, have trouble being strong and independent and failing to be able to rely on other people, because that's just the kind of character she is. But I still really enjoy this one. 4.5 out of 5 stars. Then actually at the end of that audiobook was the audio of Fallen Sun, which is book 2.5 in the series, which I was really excited for because I had not gotten around to reading that, and this is how Aries came into the story. So this is a Christmas novella, very, very short. It's like a short story really. It's 35 pages. I gave it 4 stars. I thought it was cute. It wasn't necessary for the whole plot. Not really. I mean, we see Aries a lot more in the next book, so I think it should have been 3.5 and not 2.5, but it was just cute. If you want to see all the couples in the series, I would recommend picking this up. Then I read Below Zero by Ali Hazelwood. This is the 3rd book in her STEMinist novellas, I think, and this one I was most excited for because it is in Antarctica, I think, or not Antarctica. It's in a country that's like super snowy and cold. And so our heroine meets our hero because she is wanting to get into NASA, and so I think she's working on like her PhD or something, and she wants to interview the hero, and she does, and he is super, super smart. He like went through school really early. He's very young, and he's already like the head of this team working with stuff for Mars, and that's her dream, is to work with stuff on Mars. And so they really, really click, and they kind of hook up, but then they never see each other again. And so then we fast forward to now she's working for NASA, and they see each other again, and they've never forgotten each other, but then she thinks that he is the reason behind her program not getting funding. So Ali Hazelwood loves the miscommunication trope when they just won't talk to each other and jump to conclusions. I feel like it's been in all of her books, but I really enjoyed this one. I think I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. I think it goes, book 2 is my favorite, then book 3, and then book 1, but these are all really fun. I like the fact that they had to survive in these really, really cold climates, and they were very nerdy. I mean, they nerded out over women's soccer, which I was really excited about because I love following women's soccer, and so they like threw out names of people I actually knew, so I thought that was a little fun touch. But I really enjoyed this book. Think it's a fun series to pick up, and I enjoyed the last one of the novellas. Then I read Desolate by Autumn Gray. I gave this one 2.5 stars. It was for my Forbidden Taboo Romance reading vlog, and this was a guy who wants to be a priest. He decided when he is 13 that he's going to be a priest, but he has always been into Grace, who they met when they were very young, and she's always been around town. It's kind of like a small town romance, and they end up growing closer after their senior year when he's supposed to go off to seminary school, and she's trying to decide what she wants to do, and she is trying to decide how to tell her mother what she wants to do because she doesn't want to do what she originally told her mom, what her mom wants for her. And our hero just goes through the fact that he is really, really attracted to her, wants to sleep with her, but he's going to be a priest. And so this was very frustrating because the only thing keeping him apart was the fact that the hero felt obligated to be a priest even though he was falling in love with someone. And it was always about him wanting to sleep with her and having these urges, and I'm just like, I don't need to read about an 18-year-old boy feeling this like 10 times to read a book. And so I thought that got really redundant, and I was just annoyed with the fact that they wouldn't talk to each other and figure it out together. And then what he did near the end was really obnoxious because I was like, what do you think's gonna happen now? And I feel like every reasoning for him being a priest was not for himself, it was for other things, and I just wanted him to realize that it was his life, and I just got annoyed. So I gave it 2.5 stars, and it didn't even end in this book. It's a trilogy about the same couple, so there's no resolution at the end, and they're being annoying, and I just didn't love this, so I gave it 2.5 stars. It also felt very YA, like older YA. They're 18. I didn't really connect with it. I'm not into reading about super young characters anymore, so I didn't love this one. Then I listened to the audiobook of Tempting at Twilight by Lisa Kleypas. This one I absolutely loved. Our heroine, she is being courted by someone that she really likes, but her family doesn't have the best reputation in town, and she knows like not a lot of people would accept them for that reputation. And so this other guy is the owner of a hotel that they're staying at during the season, and they meet, and it's really fun when they meet, and they really connect with one another. The heroine likes to talk a lot, and she's very intelligent, and so they really hit it off. He decides he wants her, so he's at a ball, and he knows the reputation of the guy that's courting her, and he's like, he's never gonna be good enough for you. He literally says, you're being courted by a boy, let yourself be courted by a man, meaning himself. And I love that quote so much, I like laughed out loud. I was listening to the audiobook on my drive to Cincinnati with my sister, and I kept on laughing out loud while I was listening to it. And he decides to ruin her on purpose so he can have her, because he's like, I'm a man who knows what he wants. But he also says, if we were in a story, I'd be the villain. villain, so he acknowledges he's not that great of a guy, but they end up having a marriage of convenience, and it is so good. He has a really bad past. He doesn't feel like anybody will be there for him or love him, and they don't think they would ever love each other being married to each other, but of course they fall in love. It's such a good marriage of convenience. I love this one. So excited that I found another gem in this series, because book 2 was a little bit disappointing. I still gave it 4 stars, but book 3, 5 stars, and I can't wait to continue on. Then for my high school's book club, I read A Curse So Dark and Lonely. The students chose this one to read, and they absolutely loved it. I loved it too. I really enjoy this. This is a reread for me. I read it a few years ago. I gave it 5 stars then. I'm giving it 5 stars now. It's a Beauty and the Beast retelling. Our heroine pretty much gets kidnapped from her time period and brought to this like fantastical realm, and our hero is turned into a beast every season, and so he needs someone brought to him to fall in love, and he has Gray, who is his guard, and she really shows him how to see things differently to fight back, and I really love the progression of their romance, and it was a really fun take on Beauty and the Beast, and I really enjoyed it, so I gave it 5 stars. I'm excited now to continue on because I never finished the series, but I really want to now. Then I read The Bratfus Heir, and this is by Jane Henry and Sophie Lark. This one is the last book I read for that reading vlog of Forbidden Taboo Romances, and I gave this 4 to 5 stars. Our heroine's a psychologist, and she is interviewing our hero in jail. He's in jail for life for murdering his wife. He didn't do it. He was framed, and he, though, woke up next to his wife's body covered in her blood, and nobody thinks he's innocent, and so she's there to diagnose him with a disorder of some sort because she thinks that there's like, you killed your wife, and so she's interviewing him, but he's her first person to interview because she's brand new, and he's intrigued by her, likes to play mind games with her. She's really affected by him, and not in a good way, but kind of in a good way, and she is just like, has no idea what to think, and he ends up breaking out with her and stealing her and going with him, and they're trying to figure out who framed him, and so I really enjoyed this one. I do think the heroine was a little passive in the fact that she was just like dragged around everywhere, and she seemed very naive and not really a psychologist in my opinion, like from how she would analyze things. It didn't feel as authentic to me, but I still really enjoyed this as a mafia romance and a psychology and prisoner romance, and how he escaped and pretty much like kept her captive. I thought it was a lot of fun, very action-packed, so I gave it 4 to 5 stars. Then on audio, I picked up After the Fall by Jana Darling. This is the 4th book in the series. We go back to Cressida and King. This one's my least favorite in the series. I feel like as a romance, I don't love it when the characters are already together, and so there wasn't enough like angst and tension for me, and it was just a bridge book. I felt like it was just to get the plot to where it needed to be for the next book. The first half actually overlaps with the previous book, and we just speed through a lot of things because we already got it in the previous book, so the pacing was a little off, but I do love seeing all of the characters in here and watching where the story is going to go, and I give this 4 to 5 stars. I still love the book, I still love the series, and I understand the point of this book, but it was not my favorite. It's actually my least favorite in the series, but it does have a lot to do with Lou and Zeus as well, and I love seeing Zeus's relationship with Cress and certain things that happen in here, so definitely try to read the series in order because I feel like you'll get the most out of it, but I do acknowledge this is my least favorite in the series. Then I read an e-arc of A Daring Pursuit by Kate Bateman. This is Enemies to Lovers. I did interview Kate Bateman on my channel, like I said, so I wanted to read her newest book. And this one was a lot of fun. It's Enemies to Lovers. I gave it 4.5 stars. Our heroine and hero really hate each other, and our heroine actually is not a virgin. She was taken advantage of by a suitor who then 2 days later, it was like everybody thought he was going to propose to her. She thought he was going to propose to her. He's like, just give me this one night and we'll be married anyways. He ends up marrying someone else 2 days later, so she knows that she's ruined, but he ends up blackmailing her, and she has to give him money or else he'll tell people that he ruined her and ruin her reputation. And so she is definitely an interesting character because she doesn't care what people say about her, but she does care about her reputation still. So she's just very interesting, and Tristan is someone who hates her, but like not hates her, they just have a rivalry going on, and he figures out about what had happened, and he was like, it's supposed to be pleasurable because she did not have a fun time when it happened. It was just like over and done with, and she was like, what's the big deal with this? And he bets her that he can make it pleasurable for her. So it's like kind of like a bet and a enemies with benefits going on, and it was so much fun. And then the heroine also has a lot of animals. She has a pet bear, she has pet birds, there's a little bit of suspense thrown at the end as well. This just had so much that I loved. Kate Bateman does Enemies to Lovers so well. I think every book I've read by her has been Enemies to Lovers, and I love the series, so definitely check this out when it comes out in May. I highly recommend it. Then I read To Covet a Countess by Sapna Bog. This is book 2 in the series, and this one is actually, our heroine is from India, and she is trying to escape a man who's obsessed with her and trying to marry her, and finagling his way to get her. And so she's terrified for herself and her sister, so they run away to England to try to find her cousin, who is the heroine for book 1. So they know that she is a duchess, and they think that she can help them, and she ends up trying to like sneak into their house because she's not home, and the heroine is like, but I need somewhere to stay. So they try to sneak into the house, and the hero is best friends with the Duke, and he finds them, and he's like, what are you doing? And she almost stabs him, and he ends up taking them to his home when he figures out who they are, and they talk to each other. And they end up having a lot of interactions because it is his best friend's wife's cousins that are staying, and they've met, and it was really sweet. I was about to give this a 4-star because of how slow the romance was, but then something is dropped at the end where things happen and the hero really has to fight for the heroine, and so I ended up giving it 4.5 stars. I really liked the last 30% of the book and how much happened, and I just really like a little bit more drama added to my books, which did happen in here. And just like the first book, people in society are very racist towards her because she is from India, and they do not like people who are not of like high status English blood, but she really puts people in her places more so than the heroine of book 1 did, which I really enjoyed. I loved her bond with her sister and the immediate friendship between her and her cousin when they haven't seen each other in a long time, so I definitely enjoy this, and I highly recommend checking out the 2 books in the series. The last book I have to talk about is I Married a Lizard Man. This one I picked up because I'm doing a monster romance reading vlog that's coming out tomorrow, and I gave this 3 stars. Our heroine is the 3rd daughter, and she loves farming, but the 3rd daughters are the ones that get nothing in society, so she's kind of desperate and decides to enter a matchmaking thing and is matched with a lizard man from this planet that needs help. And she decides to go, and he is a lizard man. It's kind of like Ice Planet Barbarians to me, the way that they end up getting together, but they like try to understand each other's customs. They don't really see each other as attractive, but then they start falling for each other, and they have to have a wedding night, and she's trying to help their planet farm, but the planet has been enslaved by people and forced to farm. So now once they got out of that slavery, they were like, I'm never farming again. Like, that's what we were forced to do. We were not farmers, we're hunters. And she's like, but your land can really benefit from farming. You guys are struggling as a community to feed your people because animals are scarce. And the romance was cute and very sweet, and I'm not someone who likes a cute and sweet romance. I was a little bit bored by their romance, and the farming in here was so boring. I could care less about her trying to grow berries and potatoes and try to help them at their market. So it was fine. I see why people like it, but to me it was just a very boring, lackluster romance and plot, so I gave it 3 stars. I wasn't impressed. It was just okay, and I wasn't even put off by the fact that it was a monster romance. Like, that was fine. It was just like the plot itself was pretty boring for a monster romance. So 3 out of 5 stars. And those are all the books that I've read in the first half of April. Let me know what you've read, or if you've read any of these and what your thoughts are. I would love to hear. As always, thank you so much for watching, and have a good day. Bye.